Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your Tactics and Analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined by David Hughes. Dave, how are you getting on, mate? Same as always.
Yeah, okay, mate. Funny enough, I was just looking at myself on this video thinking, good thing I've seen my barber this week. Looking a little bit loose around the edges up there. But except for that, mate, fine, yeah, good.
It's been a while since we spoke about haircuts on this show, to be honest.
I know. I think I'm a week or two behind on mine. I chased him up last week, and he said, "Oh, you're not booked into 2nd of March." But I was like, "I think it was meant to be 2nd of Feb." So, if anyone cares, yeah, I'm getting an haircut tomorrow. But that's as interesting as my week's been, mate.
I've said before, mate, this is the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
And secondary to that stuff is the football, but that's sadly what we're going to talk about for the next hour.
So tune out if you're only interested for the hair.
Yeah, if you're only here for hair updates, you can leave now. But yeah, we've got a Champions League episode to get to. We've got Inter Milan on Wednesday evening, so we're going to speak about that one. Got a few other little talking points around that game. And obviously Liverpool have just faced Burnley over the weekend. We're not specifically going to speak about, reviewing the game step by step, but there is talking points related to the game which we're going to start with, mate. So, first of all, for this week's episode, Offsides. It was very much a talking point in this week's round of fixtures, specifically relating to Liverpool, obviously. Liverpool caught Burnley offside, I think it was 7 times in the game. That's the second highest total that Liverpool have posted in the Premier League this season. But because of VAR developments, it looked like Burnley were creating clear-cut opportunities, one-on-ones with Alisson. How difficult and how annoying, I suppose, is that from a Liverpool perspective? Because it can look like you're wide open at times.
Yeah, it can. I think it's probably more annoying for fans, if anything. I think staff-wise, they'll be, they should be. Klopp and his team should be fairly satisfied, but it's this whole offside thing is quite funny for me because it just feels like it seems to surface every few months with Liverpool. They have these moments where it looks a little bit tighter than usual and it sparks this debate. But I remember going back 18 months ago now, Christian Walsh, an OG of the show for the earlier listeners, he asked us, didn't he, our opinions on it, because it was again a hot talking point at the beginning of the 2020-21 campaign. And I'll be honest, my views then were roughly, I mean, there was something along the lines of, many teams tend to be forced into their own half because how dominant Liverpool are. As a result, Liverpool get to push their defensive line really high. With the line so high, opposition teams have, very little space in which to kind of play out under immense pressure. We know Liverpool are really good counter-pressing side as well. So quite often, opponents will just have to hit the ball long and try and get in behind. But, Liverpool's pace and defence means that the ball has to be almost perfect, especially with Alisson sweeping, which he's very good at. And I definitely think that they did ramp that up a little bit when VAR came in that campaign that we're talking about, because suddenly, no errors were going to be missed. Human error wasn't really a possibility. I know we still have the occasional one with VAR now that you've got a few issues with, but 95% of them, the correct calls thanks to VAR, and I think that is as a result of. I think that's why Liverpool decided to go really in on this higher line, because it was in many ways, bulletproof. The pass to beat them has to be something special, and the attacker has to time that run absolutely perfectly. And we see week in, week out, and I'm sure maybe you'll run through them in a minute, Josh. The offside numbers back it up that it's a really successful tactic for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think at the time I do remember speaking about it at the very beginning, and the talk was is Liverpool's high line even higher, but it wasn't the case back then. It was more a case of in certain positions, Liverpool's high line was not retreating. It was staying high and catching opponents offside. It was the offside trap, and as you said, makes a lot of sense to use that alongside the addition of VAR, considering decisions are now technically perfect. And obviously, Klopp's been heavily influenced by Arrigo Sacchi in the past, and his approach and that AC Milan team did, adopt an offside trap. And if you get it right, if you've got good players, as well as you've got a sweeper keeper who's going to sweep up those balls if someone does get in. And Alisson's obviously very good 1v1 anyway. I do think it's a calculated risk that Liverpool's taken. And if you look at the numbers for the season, so far Liverpool have caught 101 players offside. That ranks them top of... I've seen a lot of stats related to the Premier League, so I'll do the whole of Europe. That ranks Liverpool top of Europe. Europe's top 5 leagues on 101. Second is Sassuolo with 96 offsides. Then Villarreal on 90 offsides. And then a bit of a drop then to Betis on 73 offsides. The highest team for an English team, for perspective, is Manchester City on 61 offsides. So Liverpool, 40 offsides more than Manchester City, despite playing a game less. So it's very obviously a deliberate attack, very obviously a pillar of Liverpool's game, really, pillar of Liverpool's defensive game. And it does make Liverpool a very unique defensive team to play against, I think. Like, if you look at through balls as well, through balls conceded, Liverpool are third in the Premier League for through balls conceded. And if you consider how much of the ball Liverpool have, that's quite high to be. Only Leeds United and Wolves have conceded more through balls than Liverpool this season. So Liverpool are that kind of team where if you're watching Liverpool and you're thinking about Liverpool as a defensive team, they are a team that you can really attempt to get behind quite a lot. I mean, if I was an opponent, if I was an opposing coach, that would be what I would attack personally. Although it's very hard to execute. So from an opposing perspective, I think it's very easy to say, right, offside trap, let's target that. But at the same time, Liverpool is so good at executing their offside trap that it's difficult, Dave.
Yeah, it is. I was just thinking to myself, I wonder how much of that, how many of those balls, those 3 balls conceded, were actual offsides that were never flagged. Because I think that's
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that is one kind of issue from a data perspective, which is obviously something we focus on. It has become a bit of an issue because a lot of the times the flag doesn't come late, and the flag comes very late on, or never. But it was offside and would have been flagged offside had it led to anything of note. So it's interesting to see if that would how many of them were actually offsides. But yeah, I'm not surprised actually that they're so high in that department, because it does feel as if that form of attack is the only way you can get through Liverpool. Like, I don't really think you can build through Liverpool. I don't think you can play through them with any great success. And it does feel like that is the only way you can kind of have any chance of creating a high quality chance. And when it does come off, you are in a very good position. You usually in behind the defence with only the keeper to beat. So if it comes off, it's very profitable. But the problem is, from an opposition perspective, it doesn't come off that often. So it is really good from a Liverpool perspective. And the other thing I've had on it is, you forget how important it can be in terms of what you actually gain from winning an offside. You regain possession of the ball inside your own half, normally with the opposition having to retreat into the whole own. And if you think of Liverpool's game plan, it tends to be lots of pressure, sustaining attacks, and defending teams. If they're having to defend for long periods, looking for that respite where they can get up the pitch, get the defence out, have a bit of a breather. Well, that's not possible if your only method of getting out is having to play these direct balls in behind the defensive line. And if it's not coming off, you're either giving the ball straight back to Liverpool, or you're being flagged for offside, and that's a free kick, which is effectively giving the ball straight back to Liverpool. So it's you can see why Liverpool's so reliant on it and why it causes so many headaches.
Yeah, it's just a bit difficult from a outside perspective. I tweeted after the game a little clip of Fabinho. Quite funny actually, but I think it kind of does highlight the reporter's question does highlight how it can play games with your perspective of what's happened during the game. I don't think Liverpool were perfect by any means, but say for example, Match of the Day showed 4 Burnley chances in their highlight reel, 2 of which wouldn't have counted if they'd have scored because they were offside. So, but if you're watching the highlight reel, if you're an opposing coach watching the highlight reel, if you're a journalist watching the highlight reel on Match of the Day, it looks like Burnley are getting in. But, you know, they're kind of not. So it is a bit difficult when it comes to your own analysis of the game. In terms of Liverpool's expected goals on the day, Liverpool posted an XG of 1.6 and Burnley posted exactly half that on 0.8. So you could argue there Burnley probably should have 1 goal potentially. But then a clean sheet is also very realistic as well. So it does look like a narrow win. Maybe there's potential there for a 1-1, a 2-1, a 2-0 type thing. So not as dominant as we usually see from Liverpool. But
can you remember any of those shots were as a result of those tight calls that might have been flagged offside?
I think
I can't. You see.
No, I think Weghorst did have 2 good openings that weren't offside, and I think one was just a very poor finish, and the other one was kind of like a half volley that he hit wide while he was on the move. So I assume most of their XG stems from that, but I'll have to look. I mean, maybe check an understat or something like that, see what understats are recorded. But
yeah,
there was a Maxwell Cornet chance in particular that literally looked like a 1v1, and he was a mile off. So if that's getting valued, that's probably quite wrong. And there was another Weghorst chance. I think that was also quite clear cut, but he was clearly offside. So it's one of them weird ones that it can just play with your perception of how the games went. And although it was definitely an ugly win, I think it was an ugly win that Liverpool largely remained in control of, in my opinion. I don't think Burnley caused too much of a threat, and I don't think Liverpool were as bad defensively as people were trying to make out after the game.
Yeah. Just before we finish off on it, does make me think, if in that game, theoretically speaking, 0.3 of Burnley's XG was for opportunities that would have been ruled out for being offside. Say you have that, 0.3 each game or every other game over the course of a campaign, that can really impact those underlying numbers in terms of expected goals against that we tend to rely heavily on and others do in terms of analysis. And if you look at the XG against in the Premier League, and you see based on FBref, Liverpool third lowest, 24.1. Then you've got Chelsea 22.1, and then City 17.2. I don't think the difference would be enough between what Liverpool and City are, but certainly where Liverpool and Chelsea are, Liverpool could well be a lot closer. They could surpass Chelsea in this particular metric and be a lot closer to City. But because of these, they are getting flagged, and it's just impacting the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting what you said before as well with the whole 3 balls thing. 3 balls conceded. I thought that was particularly interesting that, how many of those 3 balls will have been offsides, but they haven't really been flagged as much, because if you look at those numbers, Liverpool have conceded, hang on a sec, I think it was 28 3 balls this season. Just for a bit of perspective on that, Manchester City have conceded 12. Quite a bit of a difference there. City have conceded the second fewest in the league. Liverpool the third most. But, how much of that comes down to, as you said, the offside trap and how it works. So, yeah, I am a bit conscious from a media. I'm not sure how much it matters, to be honest, mate. A media perspective and what the media narrative is around Liverpool and a leaky defence when the defence isn't actually that leaky. But yeah, there's just something about the offside stuff where I love the offside stuff, don't get me wrong, but I don't like how it can kind of foster these false narratives that Liverpool were a bit more open than they actually were, because if you're catching opponents offside all the time, you're the team in control.
I agree with that.
So, right, we're going to move on to Inter Milan, mate. The Champions League is starting back up again. Have you missed it?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. You know, it's a great competition, isn't it? Always watching as a neutral party as well. But no, look, it's a great competition. It's good to have it back, and there's some interesting ties. And I think it goes out saying, not just because we're on the show, but this is definitely, even from a neutral perspective, this is going to be one of the ones that everyone's watching. This and maybe PSG Madrid as well. Pick of the ties.
Yeah, Atletico Madrid. I've also got Man United. I think they could actually knock them out there personally.
Yeah, let's be honest. You know, Man United's a bit naff, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, you said it, mate.
Yeah, it looks a bit one-sided, that one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting tie. It's one of the tougher ties in the Champions League so far. As you said, PSG have got Real Madrid. I suppose that's probably the trickiest to navigate for either team. But I do think Inter Milan is a quite tricky tie, and we did talk about them briefly when the draw was made before Christmas. Not that much has changed, really. They're easy to analyse and quite weird in certain areas as well. So in terms of how they'll set up, they are pretty much 5-3-2 every single week. That doesn't really ever change. And it's the system really that Antonio Conte used to win the league. But they've got Lautaro Martinez and Edin Dzeko up front rather than Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku. But I do think Dzeko's generally a decent replacement personally. They've got a midfield three that usually consists of Nico Barella, Brozovic, and I think Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, the Turkish international.
Yeah.
That's it, mate. I decided. I thought when we talk about this, if Josh puts that on my toes, I'm just going to say the Turkish international.
Yeah, I should have done that myself.
Yeah, no, I think you did all right on it actually.
But yeah, Barella can't play. I can't remember the reasons why, but it's something to do with suspensions or whatever. They obviously play wing backs, and the two wing backs are quite, they're very Antonio Conte, really. So you've got Ivan Perisic on one flank, who was a winger a few years back, and you've got Denzel Dumfries on the opposite flank, who people will know from the Euros, and who Dave will know quite well, actually, considering the links to Everton over the summer.
Yeah, and we might even talk about him on this show. I can't remember, or one of the shows, but yeah, he was linked. Bizarrely chose Inter Milan over Everton. Can't get my head around it.
Yeah, it's a mystery, that one.
Yeah.
And the back three usually consists of Stefan de Vrij, Milan Skriniar, and Bastoni. I think is usually the third one, but I think he's missing out as well. And I think he's their quickest centre half. He's younger and meant to be quite good. I think a lad called Federico Di Marco is playing it in his place at the moment. And in goal, they have a lad who is getting on. Samir Handanovic. I think he's a good keeper, but he's now 34. Is he 30? Oh no, 37. 37 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers before just to get a little gauge on what they're like from a data perspective. And I think you might have flagged before, mate, about defensive actions of a goalkeeper outside of their penalty area. Have you flagged that one?
Yeah. It might have been talking about someone like Alisson, funny enough.
Yeah, well, in terms of that metric for Serie A, he's absolute dead last. He's virtually none, absolutely none. And if he was in the Premier League, he'd be bottom of the Premier League as well. So in terms of like the sweeper keeper type thing, Handanovic offers none of it. He's very much, I do think it probably stems from his age. He's very much stay on your line, and I suppose you can get in and exploit that really.
Yeah, definitely. It is an interesting one, Josh. I just when we having a look, not so much data, more actual points, but Inter played the exact same number of league games as Liverpool, and both sides are on the exact same number of points.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was surprising. Depends how you compare the Premier League to the Serie A, and if you think that gives anything away. I'm inclined, obviously. I don't think it's bias either. I'm inclined to think the Premier League's better. Inter haven't really looked that good in Europe. Actually, they've looked quite good domestically in terms of at least being in a title race with AC, but in Europe they haven't looked that great. I looked at the record, and they only won 3 group stage matches. 2 were against that Sheriff. Is it Sheriff?
Yeah.
One was against Shakhtar, and that was the one at home. And then they drew with Shakhtar away and lost both games against Real Madrid. So not really a great record. But if you compare that to Liverpool, we are comparing the two. It's a completely different record. So yeah, I probably am backing. Well, I know for a fact actually. I fancy Liverpool's not even progressed, but I could see them doing victories away and back home in this one, just because I think they're much stronger side. Put it bluntly.
Yeah, I can as well, even though I think it won't be the trickiest of ties. Like you've just flagged there, Inter Milan's record in Europe. I think over the past few years it hasn't been great, and for some reason Antonio Conte doesn't tend to do that well in Europe. Inter do actually what you just said there, averaging exactly the same points per game as Liverpool this season, which is interesting. I wasn't aware of that. 2.25 points per game. The only 3 teams in Europe who are better than that are Bayern Munich, PSG, and Man City so far this season. But I am quite surprised that Inter aren't that great in Europe, and Conte isn't that great in Europe, because his systems, his 3-5-2 system, his 3-4-3 system, whatever you want to call it, whatever he's using, they do tend to be quite flexible, quite adaptable, and I think you need that in Europe. And if you look at what their numbers suggest so far this season, I don't know if you've looked at them, Dave, but they don't seem to really fit in one specific box. Like they don't seem they press, but they don't seem to be a high pressing team. They seem capable of dropping into a block, but they're not absolutely a low block team, if you know what I mean. They can build from the back, but aren't absolutely wedded to it. So they seem quite adaptable from what I'm getting, and I do think they'll need that. But I think against Liverpool, it will be a case of Liverpool. I think it'll be similar to the games against AC Milan. I think Liverpool will dominate, but I do think going forward, Inter Milan should probably offer a bit more than AC Milan, in my opinion. And I think they're slightly better coached to execute their specific system.
Yeah, I don't actually know a ton about Inzaghi's kind of coaching style. It kind of feels like he has just followed on a little bit from what Conte's done. It's basically the same structure, isn't it?
It looks virtually identical. I mean, your reliance on your wing backs to really get forward and to provide the width. I think that will be difficult against Liverpool. I think Liverpool should be able to pin them back. I think Lukaku offered a bit of an outlet on the break, on the transition for Inter Milan last season. I think Dzeko offers a bit less of that. So I think Liverpool are now more suited compared to last season to really, clog the space and keep Inter Milan in one half. But I think generally, based on what I've read, I think Inzaghi just a little bit more maybe laid back. A bit of a, not Ancelotti, but a bit more of, that type take on it. If Ancelotti was to take over the Conte team, I think Inzaghi's done similar things in terms of empowering the players, keeping the same system, that sort of stuff.
Just subtle changes.
Yeah, very, very subtle.
Yeah. I'm just on the point that we were talking about them in Europe in recent seasons, initially under Conte and obviously Inzaghi now. Where is it? Yeah, they've only won 3 of the last 11 Champions League home games, which is a pretty poor record, isn't it? If you think about it.
And Liverpool have obviously went there recently and dominated, albeit, AC Milan. Liverpool have been to that stadium pretty recently.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think a lot of it's pointing towards two kind of really big names in Europe, but in terms of where both teams are, you are definitely leaning more towards it being Liverpool victory, and I wouldn't say comfortable, because I don't think at this stage in Champions League it's ever that comfortable. But you still back them to come out on top, probably in both 90 minutes.
Yeah, I do find myself agreeing, but I also do want to stress that this is probably the best team in Italy. If you look at the numbers, shots on a per match basis, Inter post the most shots in Serie A. Expected goals on a per match basis, Inter again top. Passes into the penalty box, I think it's the same. So that's equally important, really, getting into valuable areas. Yeah, it is the same. Progressive passes, the second in the league on a per 90 basis. So they do generally probably look like the best team in Italy, in my opinion. I would also say as well, they seem to rely fairly on crosses. Looks like, it's supposed to be quite normal for the back three teams. It was stretching the pitch wide, using width and things like that, but they post the most crosses on a per match basis in Serie A. Obviously, you've got Dzeko in the box, who's good in the air. But I do think Liverpool, again, are well suited to coping with that. So I think Liverpool are facing the best team in Italy. But I think Liverpool are very well suited to make it look like they aren't, basically.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with that. I agree. I think it's gonna be it's a nice matchup for Liverpool, shall we say, without getting too carried away.
Yeah, in terms of the Champions League as a whole, mate, how are you viewing it? I mean, I know we have asked this a few times during the season, but just looking at 538 for the whole, Manchester City are the favourites, apparently, according to 538, 25%. Bayern Munich on 20%, and then Liverpool on 15%. And then, funnily enough, Ajax, who I think we flagged as dark horses. But, I mean, I think Liverpool have got a really, really strong chance of winning it this season.
Yeah, I'd probably go with those predictions, actually, in terms of where my personal rankings stand. But a lot of that does tie in with specifically the immediate fixtures that those, say we look at the three teams, Liverpool have got Inter Milan, although we've just talked about it, being a fixture that they can come out of and progress through. Compared to what Bayern and City have got, it's the tougher of the three for sure. Bayern have got RB Salzburg, so you'd expect them to comfortably progress, and City have got Sporting Lisbon. Again, you'd expect them to progress past them. So I think it's just if all three teams progress, then it will just be dependent on who's getting who in the next round for me in terms of where I ranked them as favourites to win it. I think if it was if we were looking at it as like a blank template with just the three teams, wouldn't before a draw, I'd put those three teams very similar in terms of probabilities of winning it. Beyond them, Ajax dark horse, I agree. Don't think they'll win it though. I guess you're probably the same.
Chelsea,
maybe. They seem to be. They seem to be collecting a few trophies, don't they? Early into Tuchel's reign, obviously the main one being Champions League last year, so you can't rule them out. Real Madrid, PSG. I think whoever wins that tie will also be a bit of a problem as well.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how things go, but I do think this could be Liverpool's. Well, I think it is Liverpool's best chance of a major trophy, because I think obviously the odds in the Premier League are very low at the minute. But I think once you couple in Anfield and Liverpool's wide variety of weapons and things like that they can use, and the experience Liverpool have got in this tournament, I also think Liverpool have got a much better defence than Bayern Munich, even though you don't often see it in the Bundesliga. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go, but hopefully Liverpool get through. Hopefully Liverpool make it easy, and we can. I mean, if they don't, I suppose we'll speak about the second leg in a bit more detail because there'll be more on it. But yeah, I think we'll leave that one there. But one of the weapons that I've just mentioned that Liverpool seem to have at the minute is set pieces, Dave. So against Burnley, Liverpool scored again from a set piece, and again it was the opening goal. And I looked the other day, And in Liverpool's past 4 games in a row in the Premier League, Liverpool's opening goal has been a set piece.
Yeah, it's becoming crucial, isn't it? And it is really, if you think about it. Say we use the Burnley game as the example. It's not the easiest place to go. It was tough conditions on the day. Not maybe going your way in open play, but suddenly you crucially break that deadlock, and you've got your nose in front, and then you kind of back Liverpool to have enough to see out Burnley on any day. But it's all just about getting that important goal and taking the lead, and it is huge in terms of scoring that all important goal. And I remember just not that long ago, maybe like 12 months ago, just having a quick look at some numbers, just to see roughly what the success rate tends to be for teams when they score the opening goal. I think I used like 3 or 4 seasons worth of Premier League data, and it was something like for every 7 in 10, I think it was. So
Yeah, I think I know what it is. I think 70%.
yeah, 70%. So if you score the opening goal 70% of the time, you should go on and win the football match. So it's absolutely huge, really, to get that opening goal. And it's good having this kind of multifaceted attacking way of doing it, and that's what they seem to be doing this year. It was a big focus a couple of years ago. Struggled a little bit with key players missing last year, but it seemed like it became a big focus again in the summer. Obviously, that Noro 11 come in pre-season, didn't he? Did a bit of work with them. I think they're still working with. Well, in fact, I know they're still working with them behind the scenes. They're obviously a company who are working on specifically marginal gains, and it seems to be bringing success.
Yeah, one thing I like about it is, the set piece goals are coming in different ways. They're not all the same set piece happening on recurring, really. So if you look at the game against Burnley, it was a near post flick on from Sadio Mane that kind of causes the major issue for Burnley. And against Crystal Palace a few weeks ago, Virgil van Dijk just scores straight from the head, very easy. And I think the other two around that have been scored by Jota, and I think they've been just kind of second balls in and around the 6-yard box, which he's obviously becoming a master of. He's becoming a total poacher, isn't he? So
Yeah.
Liverpool have got these, a bit of a variety of ways of scoring from set pieces. It doesn't just seem to be the 6'5" lad has to head it. There's the second balls they're getting picked up on all the time.
Yeah, I do look at it. The only problem I have with set pieces is I think it sometimes, unless you're privy to know what's actually happening and what the plan is, it's really hard to analyse them thoroughly from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But for me, I do wonder, say we use the Burnley one as an example, it may have just been a poor delivery and by chance, but I don't always believe it is. And I think rather than it being, as you said, routines to free up the likes of Van Dijk to head it, I do feel like there's a focus on trying to maybe just create a bit of chaos and think about those second contacts. So the one against Burnley was obviously a flick on, wasn't it? And with players charging in to meet the second contact. And I've seen a couple of them this year, and it does make me think of maybe it is the first contact isn't necessarily about getting the shot off, and it's more about having players in specific areas so that the second phase is where you profit from. And if you look back at all those kind of specifically corner goals, there's been a lot of them this year.
Yeah, I mean, so far this season, Liverpool have, I think it's 14 goals from set pieces in the Premier League, and that is the most. Second most is on 12. But one thing I noticed this morning, when again I was looking at Inter Milan, have the most in Serie A. They're on 12, joint most alongside Roma. And on the defensive side of the game, they seem to have a good defence. They've conceded only 3, which is the second best. So in a way there, you've got a bit of a narrative of, two real set piece monsters coming together. I'm not specifically sure who is getting on the end of the Inter Milan deliveries. I mean, I could guess, likes of Dzeko and Skriniar and players like that maybe. But it looks like two top set piece teams coming together for that's another little Champions League line that I forgot to pick up on really.
Yeah, no, it's kind of quite similar sides in those for the reasons we've just stated, isn't it? I think if City A was a little bit more, and I don't want to put it down too much, it's a top league, obviously, but I think it was a little bit more competitive. You'd be looking at the narrative would be this kind of battle of the two almost identical teams going at it, given league position points accumulated and that third one, which I didn't know about, similar output in terms of set pieces.
Yeah. Just one little final note on set pieces, mate. Are you on Wisecout?
I can be while we're talking.
Get it up very quickly while I'm rambling.
Yeah.
And look at Liverpool's first goal against Leicester City. It is a set piece, and I'll describe it as you're getting it up because it's one of the. You said before it's difficult to analyze these situations. Sometimes it can look like a thing is premeditated. Sometimes it can look random. If you look at the set piece goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold takes the corner. It's out swinging, but it's kind of near post. It hasn't got that much distance on it, but as it comes near post and Van Dijk's going towards it, if you look towards the back post, 3 Liverpool players all make exactly the same movements.
Yeah.
In Firmino, Fabinho, and John Matip, I think that is, they all make exactly the same movements to the back post just before Van Dijk contacts with the header at the near post. And funnily enough, the other player who's already kind of in that zone anyway, in Diego Jota, just puts it away with a tap in. Would you say that one was premeditated, or is that? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. And that kind of ties in a little bit to what I was saying a couple of minutes ago about. I think it is. It's by design, putting it thinking more about the second concept rather than the first. I mean, another thing that really reiterates that point for me is the amount of outswinging corners Liverpool take compared to the rest of the Premier League. Because traditionally with set pieces, it's in swingers that are considered the more dangerous because obviously the trajectory of... let me try that again. Trajectory of the ball is going towards the goal, meaning that's easy to get a glancing header on there. But, I mean, for Liverpool this year, they've attempted 31 in swinging corners and 132 outswingers. I mean, to put that in context, that's the highest in the Premier League.
Got a little bit of a preference there, then.
Yeah, to say the least, mate. To put that in context, the second team in terms of the highest number of outswinging corners this season, is Manchester United, and they've attempted 60. So, Liverpool are well over twice as many outswingers. They massively favour outswingers, and I think that's one of the reasons why. If you look at the goals, I think it is all about that second phase of the corner, and it's proven to be successful.
Yeah, I think specifically with that example that I've just used there as well, I do think Van Dijk is intending to get a shot away there with his head, but I think Liverpool kind of appreciate that. The keeper's probably going to save that, but the keeper's probably not going to be able to handle it, and that's then when the second phase comes in. That's when the second ball comes in, because it kind of comes off the keeper's attempt to save it. Basically, Kasper Schmeichel saves it. It goes right into Jota's path, and he just taps it in. I think a lot of the time Liverpool appreciate those outswinging crosses and headers to be saved, but to not be caught, and they fall in dangerous areas, and Liverpool can maximise it. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, just on that, I was going to say, how I'd kind of summarise it. I think they put contingency plans in place, so it's not like corner routines traditionally have just been about doing X, Y, Z to free up this player to get the headed shot. Whereas now it does kind of feel like, so say what you just said there, the first plan is, say, Van Dijk to get that headed shot and see if he can score the goal from it. But if he doesn't get that proper contact and he just can only direct it ever so slightly and it's going wide, then you've got 3 players following up on it. Or what happens, he gets it on target, it's saved, but then it comes out to Jota who's falling it in. So it's contingency plans basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very interesting, and it's a weapon that Liverpool are obviously using of late. It's allowed Liverpool to get 4 leads in a row in the Premier League, and hopefully it'll continue. And considering the Champions League coming up, Inter Milan obviously seems to be quite capable when it comes to set pieces. It's going to be interesting to see how things work out there. But just a final note for this week's pod. The word is that James Milner might be getting a 1-year extension on his deal. A little bit surprising. Are you surprised by that, or?
A little bit, because I think he's finally started to look a little bit more human when I've watched him this year. You know, maybe that the immense kind of fitness that he has is, it's not waning as such, but maybe impacting his ability. But that being said, I think every great side needs utility players. You know, players who can come in and do a reliable job in different positions, and that's what he is. So I guess that's maybe Klopp's thinking behind it.
Yeah, I mean, in the January just gone, he did just turn 49, I think. No, he turned 36 in January just gone. But I mean, I will say I've got no issues with a player like that staying around personally. He might have his faults. He might give away a few he does give away a few fouls. But I do think that you can't really put a number on the value of a player like that. You know, the leadership aspect and communication aspect, the experience. It does sound a little bit cliche, but I think in the case of Milner in particular, he's really been around. You know, that man, I think he can offer a lot of value behind the scenes and stuff. So if he wants to keep playing, maybe Liverpool have found a spot for him. But I am inclined to think that if he's going to keep getting minutes for Liverpool somehow, I'd be surprised if that's going to come from Liverpool maybe not signing a midfielder in the summer or losing out on one of the midfield targets. I think it might be maybe we'll accept a fee in the summer for Nico Williams, and maybe Milner will get minutes as a right back behind Trent. That's just a guess, but I do think Liverpool will have a little bit of a midfield overhaul in the summer. And I'm not sure where Milner will get minutes if he's going to stay on for another year. But right back could be the way. Not sure.
Potentially, just to have that option there. You're probably right.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you've got to be careful giving players like of this age certain contracts, but it depends on what wage he's willing to take, and if he's taking only an extra year, I think that's fine. Have you got any issues with keeping a player like that around, Dave? Or I mean, I know he's getting on, as I said, but the value that he offers.
Yeah, I don't think he's a huge earner though, is he?
Well, I think when he first signed years and years ago he was, but I think now, I think he's probably around 100, 150 maybe, something like that.
Oh, I didn't think it'd be that much. Wow.
I think he signed. I think he signed for something like 150 when he first signed, 130 or something. But
I wonder if there's, sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if there's potentially a little bit of this kind of progressing to that coaching aspect as well. Maybe that he's eyeing up something like that. He's going to stay one more year, stay around it, and then potentially move into the coaching setup at maybe youth level or something. Because he got heavily involved that Shrewsbury game, was it, in the FA Cup?
Yeah, well, I did see comments from him saying, "I will keep playing for as long as I possibly can."
Right.
So simply because when you stop, you stop. That's it. So
yeah, fair.
I had a feeling he would potentially go to Leeds. Personally, I think a lot of people felt that. But if you can keep him around for the next year, as I said, I've got no major issues with it. Really, I think it's a sensible move, providing you can get him the minutes that he seems to want.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so we'll round up there, I think. It was a 45 minutes episode today, but we did get through a fair bit. So, Dave, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you, mate, and cheers, everyone.
Yeah, and we'll be back next week to talk about more Liverpool-related points. So, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you then.